Okay, today we're going to talk about inspecting the material condition of aluminum hulled vessels. The hazards and safety precautions are going to be general for being in a shipyard, or as you see for a vessel up on a dry dock with these kind of supports. Your general PPE is called for, as well as make sure you're aware that you don't enter any confined space without a marine chemist certificate. Okay, this is an old aluminum inspected vessel that was inspected many years ago. It's sitting up now and they're slowly working on it. But today I want to talk about visual discontinuities of aluminum and any defects you may see. There are many different kinds. We may be looking for insets, punctures, tears. We also want to evaluate the oxidation, pitting, fracturing, deformation and warping, or erosion and cavitation, as well as galvanic corrosion and any evidence of stray current, any necking or elongation, as well as abrasions and fatigue wear. So let's look around the hull and see if we find any of these things. Right here in the chine, I see a good example of a, what would you call that, an inset, a fold, some damage though to the chine. It might be hard to see from the camera's point of view, but if I were to take my flashlight and in profile, I might be able to notice this pitting right here. So corrosion overall is something to look for. This kind of pitting, or what we call the general orange peel corrosion that we usually see with steel, you usually don't see a whole lot with aluminum. Most aluminum corrosion is very localized in short and deep pits. We have an example of a small inset right here. Again, imagine if I could hold the string from here to here, and then with my pen put it against that string, I might be able to see about how deep that pit is. You can see it's a little deeper and sharper here. When you see these kind of insets, you need to be thinking about what kind of structure might be deformed on the inside when you're on the inside of the vessel. This is not good right here. This inset that was done, all of this welding is close proximity to the welding of the inset. It could be pretty bad for aluminum. Aluminum welds and aluminum repairs, you always have to be on the lookout for the heat affected zone. Aluminum's a lot more brittle than steel, and you can see a whole lot more fracturing in the heat affected zones from poorly planned repairs or welding. Here we finally found an example of a fracture. Inside there was a pipe that used to come here, but right here we can see that after blasting, a fracture shows. So looking at that fracture and its proximity to the rub rail, I don't know if grinding and welding that is going to be in order. We might discuss some other repair proposals with them and maybe an insert. All right, as we look for unauthorized repairs, here's a good example of a doubler plate that's been welded onto the hull instead of inserted. But again, this vessel is not in operation, and they may have just temporarily welded these on to prevent further spreading of a corrosion or a hole. Here we can see some recent hull work, and you see the quality of the weld bead that was run. For aluminum, when they're doing the TIG welding, it's very important that they shield from the wind, and a lot of times welders won't take the time to shield the wind on aluminum hole welding. But overall, this looks like pretty good work. Okay, so on aluminum, when you're evaluating hole repairs and repair proposals, it's important to make sure that they choose the proper grade of aluminum, either 5086 or 6061. Another important step is the non-destructive testing of the weld, or the quality of the weld, after the repair's been completed. And again, it's the heat affected zone in aluminum that you're worried about, as well as the quality of the weld. Most often at this shipyard, we use dye-penetrant as a method of non-destructively testing this weld. Also, you want to look for fractures right adjacent to, but not within, the weldment itself. Again, the heat affected zone, something to pay attention on aluminum hulls. Okay, in the past, the OSV, the offshore supply vessel industry, started using aluminum hulled vessels in their fleets as a means of saving fuel and becoming more competitive in the marketplace. But it did present some challenges as these hulls with aluminum started sailing in the ocean's routes, subjected to more waves with larger and smaller periods. One of the vulnerable areas of an aluminum hulled ship is the bow area, as well as all the internal structure of the peaks in the area of the bow. Aluminum's a little more brittle than steel, so as they plow into the water, the flexing that's going to happen is going to result in more fractures of welds in this general area. Also, aluminum's a little more susceptible to gouging than steel is, and here we have a good example of some gouged aluminum right off the stem here. As you can see, there's been a few repairs, and this is a good place to focus for broken welds on structural members on the internal. Okay, I'm not going to crawl down into this space because it was enclosed and I don't want to go in a confined space. But as you can see, the structure in the forward peak on the bow of this aluminum hulled vessel, I want you to notice the size of the stringers that run longitudinally compared with the size of this mammoth structure that runs horizontally, or port to starboard. It's very beefy compared to that. But like I said, being an aluminum hulled vessel, when it flexes from pitching into the seas, you're going to see a lot more fracturing of welds down in this space. As a matter of fact, right here you can see an example of a weld that's been fractured and welded many times. Here, maybe even there. It's normal to have fracturing on an aluminum hulled bow, and they can re-weld them a number of times, but eventually the fatigue is going to be so much that you've reached the point of no return, and you can't just keep re-welding up fatigue fractures. It'll be called, by then it'll be time to call for a more permanent repair, either cropping and renewing structure or hull plating. Again, talk to your verifying officer at your unit to help you determine when too much fatigue fracturing has occurred. Okay, to summarize evaluating the material condition of aluminum vessels, we talked about the safety hazards involved, We talked about looking for all the different kind of discontinuities and defects to be on the lookout for. We talked about the possibility of fabrication defects either with the heat affected zone or with welding of poor quality. The quality of the welders is very important with aluminum hulls. We talked about looking for unauthorized or improper or temporary repairs to ensure they haven't taken place. And again, as a tip, I just say make sure you're very thorough on your non-destructive testing post-weld. Again, there can be a lot of bad places in brand new weld. That's why we really test for it. And if you get a good aluminum TIG welder, make sure he gets a lot of work in your AOR if you can. And the last tip is, I told you about the nature of aluminum corrosion versus steel. So you're going to see pitting of a deeper nature than you see on steel. So whenever I crawl and do internals on an aluminum vessel, I always bring a paper clip. When aluminum rusts or corrodes, it usually results in a white powderish substance that fills up the pits. I don't have it today, but when I see evidence of pitting, I unfold a paper clip or somehow dig all the white powder out of the wastage pit to see how deep it really goes. Okay. So we talked a lot about the aluminum hull defects. It just takes a lot of experience and practice to get it good at it. So please talk to your verifying officers at your local unit.